It is 12:42 in the afternoon on July 20th, 1944. In a wooden conference room at Hitler's military headquarters, deep in the forests of East Prussia, a bomb explodes. The blast tears through the room with enough force to blow out every window and door. The roof partially collapses. The walls splinter outward. 3 officers are killed instantly. 20 others are thrown to the ground, and through the smoke, Adolf Hitler stands up. His trousers are in tatters. His right eardrum is shattered. His arm is badly burned. His hair is on fire, but he is alive. And in that single moment, in the space between the explosion and Hitler getting to his feet, the fate of the entire war is decided. The man who placed the bomb is already gone. He is driving to an airfield 2 miles away. I'm absolutely certain that no human being could have survived what he just heard. He is wrong, and in the 15 minutes between placing that bomb and walking out of that building, 5 things went wrong that should never have gone wrong. 5 moments, 5 decisions, 5 coincidences, any one of them reversed. And Hitler dies. The war ends. Millions of people live. This is the story of those 15 minutes. And the man who spent 3 fingers, 1 eye, and his entire life trying to make them count. By the end of this video, you will know exactly what those 5 things were. And you will understand why the most nearly successful assassination attempt in history failed. Not because the men who planned it were careless, but because history sometimes turns on the most absurd, unforeseeable details. To understand what happened on July 20th, 1944, you first need to understand the man who carried the briefcase into that room. Because Claus Schenk Graf von Stauffenberg was not supposed to be the one who killed Hitler. He was not even supposed to be in that room at all. Claus von Stauffenberg was born in 1907 into one of the oldest aristocratic families in Germany. His ancestors had fought for Prussia against Napoleon. His family home was a castle in the Swabian Alps. He grew up riding horses, studying philosophy, reading poetry, and training as a cavalry officer, the embodiment of an older Germany that had nothing to do with the one Adolf Hitler was building. He was, by every account of everyone who knew him, extraordinary. Not just intelligent, genuinely brilliant. Not just capable, naturally magnetic. When Hitler came to power in 1933, Stauffenberg was initially cautiously optimistic. Germany's economy was recovering. The humiliation of Versailles was being reversed. For a young officer with a career ahead of him, it seemed, briefly, like a new beginning. But then, the war began. And what Stauffenberg saw in Poland, in France, and finally in the Soviet Union, changed something in him permanently. He saw the mass shootings of civilians. He saw the deliberate starvation of prisoners. He saw the systematic murder of Jews on the Eastern Front. And he said so, out loud, to fellow officers, at a time when saying so could get you killed. Therefore, in the summer of 1942, he was transferred, officially for career reasons, to North Africa. Away from the Eastern Front, away from what he kept talking about. It was in North Africa in April 1943 that the war changed Stauffenberg's body as permanently as it had changed his mind. On the 7th of April, his staff car was strafed by American P-40 fighter bombers near a town called Medzuna in Tunisia. The attack lasted seconds. When it was over, Stauffenberg was found lying beside his overturned burning car, semi-conscious, his body riddled with shrapnel. Both eyes were damaged. His right arm was virtually shot away. 2 fingers of his left hand were gone. He was rushed to a field hospital where doctors fought for hours to save his life. They lost his left eye entirely. They amputated what remained of his right hand at the wrist. They removed 2 more fingers from his left hand, leaving him with just 3. His thumb, his index finger, and his middle finger. 3 fingers on one hand, 1 eye, no right hand at all. He spent 3 months recovering in Munich. And during those 3 months, lying in a hospital bed, learning to write again with 3 fingers and his teeth, Claus von Stauffenberg made a decision. He was going to kill Adolf Hitler. Not because someone asked him to, not because a conspiracy recruited him, because he decided, alone, in a hospital bed, that it had to be done, and that if not him, then who? I could not look the wives and children of the fallen in the eye if I did not do everything in my power to prevent further pointless sacrifice. Those were his words. Not a speech, not a rallying cry, just a man in a hospital bed deciding what he was going to do with whatever time he had left. Therefore, when he returned to active duty in Berlin, posted to the reserve army because his wounds made frontline service impossible, he threw himself into the conspiracy that had been building among senior Wehrmacht officers since 1938. He did not join it. He took it over. The German resistance to Hitler is one of the least known stories of the Second World War. Most people assume that every German supported the regime. Most people are wrong. From the moment Hitler came to power, there were senior military officers, diplomats, clergy, and civilians working in secret to remove him. By 1943, this resistance had coalesced around a core group of Wehrmacht officers led by General Henning von Treschow, Colonel Friedrich Ulbricht, and now Stauffenberg. Their plan was elegant in its brutality. Hitler himself had already authorized a contingency plan called Operation Valkyrie, designed to allow the reserve army to take control of Germany's cities in the event of internal unrest, an SS coup, a slave labor uprising, a breakdown of civil order. Yes, the conspirators looked at this plan and realized something extraordinary. Hitler had given them the tool to overthrow him. They would assassinate Hitler, then immediately claim over the radio that the assassination was an SS coup attempt, exactly the scenario Valkyrie was designed to counter. The reserve army would activate, seize Berlin, arrest Himmler and Göring, disarm the SS across Germany, and by the time anyone understood what was actually happening, the conspirators would be in control of every key installation in the country. It was brilliant. It required only one thing. Hitler had to die first. But Hitler was almost impossible to kill. He changed his schedule constantly and without warning. He was surrounded at all times by the SS and the Führerbegleitkommando, his personal bodyguard. He moved between multiple headquarters unpredictably. He wore a cap reinforced with 3.5 pounds of steel. There were rumors, probably true, of a bulletproof vest. He tasted every meal before eating it. Every gift he received was checked by security staff before it reached him. Between 1933 and 1944, there had been at least 42 assassination attempts. Every single one had failed. Therefore, the conspirators had concluded by 1944 that the only realistic opportunity was to plant a bomb at one of Hitler's military conferences, the one regular occasion where access to the Führer was possible. Several officers had volunteered to do it. General Helmuth Stieff agreed, then backed out. A young officer named Axel von Dembusche volunteered to blow himself up alongside Hitler at a uniform demonstration. But the demonstration was canceled when an Allied bombing raid destroyed the uniforms. Every attempt, every near miss, every volunteer who backed down at the last moment. Therefore, Stauffenberg, 1 eye, 3 fingers, no right hand, made the decision that nobody else would make. He would do both. He would fly to Hitler's headquarters, plant the bomb, escape before detonation, fly back to Berlin, and run the coup himself. One man, 2 jobs, the assassination and the revolution, both on the same day, both within hours of each other. His fellow conspirators told him this was too much for one person, that dividing his attention between the assassination and the coup reduced the chances of success of both. Stauffenberg told them he was the only one with access to Hitler who was also willing to go through with it. He was right, and he was wrong. But history intervened twice before July 20th. On July 7th, 13 days before the final attempt, Stauffenberg flew to Hitler's conference with the bomb in his briefcase. He was ready. He was going to do it. But Himmler was not present. The conspirators had decided that Himmler and Göring must both die alongside Hitler to prevent either one from seizing power in the aftermath. Therefore, Stauffenberg did not detonate. He flew back to Berlin with the bomb still in his briefcase. Himmler walked away from Hitler's conference not knowing that a one-eyed colonel with 3 fingers had just decided not to kill him that day. On July 15th, 5 days later, Stauffenberg flew again with the bomb, again ready. But Hitler left the room during the conference before Stauffenberg had time to prime the device. Therefore, the bomb went back in the briefcase. The flight back to Berlin, the silence, the waiting. And then July 20th, one final chance. The conspirators knew the Gestapo was closing in on the network. Rumors of the plot had been reaching German intelligence for months. One more delay, and there would be no more chances. Whatever happened on July 20th, it was going to be the last attempt. The Wolf's Lair, Wolfschanze in German, is a vast complex of concrete bunkers buried in the dense forests of East Prussia, near the town of Rastenburg. It has been Hitler's primary military headquarters since 1941. The name suits it. 3 rings of security, minefields, wire, guard posts. The outer perimeter alone covers several square miles. To reach Hitler inside the innermost zone requires passing through multiple checkpoints, showing papers at each one, even for senior Wehrmacht officers. Stauffenberg arrives by air at 10:15 a.m. He is carrying a yellow leather briefcase. Inside the briefcase, wrapped in a shirt, 2 blocks of British-made plastic explosive, each weighing 1 kilogram, each fitted with a pencil detonator, a device so named because it looks like a pencil. A thin copper tube containing acid that slowly eats through a wire until it releases a firing pin. Once the detonator is activated, the bomb has approximately 10 minutes before it explodes. The plan is simple. Before the conference begins, Stauffenberg will excuse himself, find a private room, prime both bombs simultaneously, return to the conference room, place the briefcase under the table as close to Hitler as possible, make a pretense of a phone call, leave the room, and be in a car driving to the airfield before the detonation. With both bombs armed and detonated in the underground concrete bunker where the conference was originally scheduled, nobody in that room survives. Here is where the first thing goes wrong. Failure point 1. The weather. July 20th, 1944 is described by every eyewitness as unbearably, oppressively hot. The kind of heat that makes concrete bunkers feel like ovens. The conference, which was supposed to take place in the underground Führer bunker, is moved at the last minute to a prefabricated wooden barracks building above ground for ventilation because it is too hot underground. This decision, made by a staff officer who had no idea of its significance, changes everything. The underground bunker is sealed concrete. When a bomb explodes inside it, the blast has nowhere to go. It bounces off the walls, magnifying and concentrating until everyone inside is dead. The wooden barracks above ground is the exact opposite. Thin walls, multiple windows, wooden doors. And when a bomb explodes inside it, the blast vents outward, through the windows, through the walls, into the open air, losing killing power with every surface it escapes through. The bomb that would have been fatal in the bunker becomes survivable in the barracks. Stauffenberg does not know this yet when he arrives at the Wolf's Lair. He finds out only when he reaches the inner compound and is told where the conference has been moved. There is no time to reconsider. The conference starts in less than 2 hours. Failure point 2, the guard at the door. At approximately 12:15 p.m., Stauffenberg asks to use a private room to change his sweat-soaked shirt before the conference begins. He is given access to a small anteroom in General Wilhelm Keitel's office. His aide Werner von Haeften is with him. The 2 bombs are on the table in front of them. Stauffenberg, using the special pliers designed for his 3-fingered grip, begins the slow, painstaking process of crushing the end of the first pencil detonator. This is not easy. It requires precise pressure applied at exactly the right point on the copper tube, with one hand, with 3 fingers, against a ticking clock. He has the first detonator primed. He picks up the second bomb, and then someone knocks on the door. A guard's voice, insistent, impatient. "Colonel, you must hurry. The conference is about to begin. You are already late." Haeften looks at Stauffenberg. Stauffenberg looks at the second bomb. He makes a decision in under 3 seconds. He hands the second bomb to Haeften. 1 bomb goes into the briefcase. 1 bomb stays in Haeften's hands. Then, in Hafton's coat pocket. Stauffenberg tucks in his shirt, picks up the briefcase, and walks out to join the conference. The second bomb, the bomb that would have doubled the killing power of the explosion, never makes it into the room. 1 kilogram of explosive instead of 2, because a guard knocked on a door and told a colonel to hurry up. Failure point 3, the table. The Wolf's Lair conference room has a large rectangular oak table at its center. Not a standard meeting table, a map table. Heavy, solid, built for purpose, with a massive oak support beam running beneath it. Not 4 legs, but 2 enormous rectangular bases, 1 at each end. Each base a solid block of oak, thick enough to stop shrapnel. 24 officers stand around this table. Hitler stands near the center of one long side. Stauffenberg enters with the briefcase and is shown to a position near Hitler, close enough. He sets the briefcase on the floor under the table, slightly to Hitler's right. The open briefcase faces the Fuhrer. The bomb is pointed directly at him. Then Stauffenberg asks to be excused. There is a phone call he must take. He leaves the room. He exits the building. He gets into his car and tells the driver to go. Failure point 4, Colonel Heinz Brandt's foot. This is the moment history turns on something so small, so accidental, so completely random, that 70 years later, historians still struggle to process its implications. Inside the conference room, while Stauffenberg's car drives toward the airfield, a staff officer named Colonel Heinz Brandt needs to get closer to the map on the table. He steps forward. His foot catches on the briefcase on the floor beside him. He reaches down, picks it up, moves it, places it on the other side of the massive oak table support, putting 2 inches of solid oak directly between the bomb and Adolf Hitler. He does not know what is in the briefcase. He is not part of any conspiracy. He is just a man who needed to look at a map and did not want to trip over a bag. At 12:42 p.m., the bomb explodes. The blast destroys the conference room. The roof partially collapses. Every window blows out. The massive oak table splits in half. And everyone on Stauffenberg's side of the oak support, the side where the briefcase had been placed, is killed or catastrophically wounded. Colonel Heinz Brandt, the man who moved the briefcase, loses his leg and dies the next day. General Rudolf Schmundt dies from his injuries weeks later. General Gunther Korten dies within hours. Stenographer Heinz Berger dies instantly. And Adolf Hitler, on the other side of that oak support, shielded by 2 inches of solid wood, stands up. His trousers are in tatters. His right eardrum is shattered. Both eardrums, actually, though he won't admit the full extent for weeks. His arm is burned. His hair is on fire for a moment. But he is alive. And the first words he says, before anyone has assessed his injuries, before anyone has called for a doctor, "I am invulnerable. I am immortal." Failure point 5. The communication line. This one is perhaps the most painful. General Erich Feldgiebel, a conspirator inside the Wolf's Lair, had one job on July 20th. After the explosion, once Hitler was confirmed dead. One Feldgiebel was to send a pre-arranged signal to the Bendlerblock in Berlin, the Reserve Army headquarters, telling the conspirators that Hitler was dead and that Operation Valkyrie should begin immediately. He then had a second job. He was to cut all communications from the Wolf's Lair. Every telephone line, every radio frequency, every telegraph wire. Silence. So that nobody at the Wolf's Lair could contradict the signal or report what had actually happened before the coup in Berlin was already underway. Feldgiebel heard the explosion. He saw the devastation. He did what most people would do. He assumed no one had survived. He sent a confused, garbled message to Berlin. Something had happened. The details were unclear. And then he froze. He could not bring himself to cut the communications. And not because he lacked the nerve exactly, but because he was looking at the scene and he was not certain enough to cut the lines. He waited. He watched. He saw Hitler walk out of the building. By then, it was too late. The lines stayed open. The wolf's lair stayed connected to the world. And while Stauffenberg was in the air flying back to Berlin, still convinced Hitler was dead. The lines were open, and General Wilhelm Keitel was on the telephone telling anyone who would listen that Hitler had survived. Stauffenberg lands in Berlin at 4 p.m. He is certain Hitler is dead. He heard the explosion from outside the building. He saw the smoke. He watched the chaos. He told everyone he spoke to on the phone from the airfield. Hitler is dead. Begin Valkyrie immediately. But the men in the Bendlerblock had received Feldgiebel's garbled message. They did not know what to believe. General Olbricht, who was supposed to issue the Valkyrie orders the moment the signal arrived, had waited. For 3 critical hours, from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m., while Stauffenberg was in the air, nothing happened in Berlin. 3 hours. The window in which the reserve army could have moved and seized the city before anyone knew Hitler was alive. Wasted, because Olbricht was not certain. Therefore, when Stauffenberg lands and takes command, screaming at his fellow conspirators to act, the coup is already 3 hours behind schedule. In those 3 hours, Joseph Goebbels has been on the telephone to loyal Wehrmacht commanders, telling them Hitler is alive and that they must not follow any orders they receive from the Bendlerblock. Heinrich Himmler has taken personal control of the SS response, and crucially, Major Ernst Riemer, the commander of the Guard battalion that was supposed to arrest Goebbels under the Valkyrie orders, has been put on the telephone directly with Adolf Hitler himself. Hitler is alive. His voice is on the telephone. Riemer can hear him, and in that moment, everything collapses. Riemer's unit, the unit that was supposed to be the sword of the revolution, switches sides. And the men who had started moving to arrest Nazi leaders stop moving. The reserve army units that had begun implementing Valkyrie orders receive counter-orders, telling them it was all a mistake. By 11 p.m., less than 11 hours after the bomb exploded, it is over. Stauffenberg is arrested in the Bendlerblock after a brief gunfight in which he is wounded in the shoulder. His co-conspirators are seized. General Ludwig Beck asks for a pistol and shoots himself. And at 1 minute past midnight on July 21st, in the courtyard of the Bendlerblock by the light of car headlights, Claus Schenk Graf von Stauffenberg is executed by firing squad. His last words, "Long live our sacred Germany." History remembers July 20th, 1944 as the bomb plot that failed. But the evidence tells a more precise story. The bomb plot failed because of 5 specific, individually preventable failures, none of which were inevitable, each of which can be traced to a specific moment, a specific person, a specific decision or coincidence. The hot weather that moved the conference above ground. The guard who knocked on the door before the second bomb could be primed. The table that was designed too solidly. The foot of a man who needed to look at a map. The communication officer who could not cut the lines. Remove any one of these 5 things, any single one, and Adolf Hitler dies on July 20th, 1944. The war in Europe most likely ends in 1944. The Red Army does not reach Berlin. The Iron Curtain is never drawn across the middle of Europe. The Cold War as we know it may never happen. 50 million people died in the Second World War. The bulk of those deaths occurred after July 1944. Most historians believe that if the July plot had succeeded, the war would have ended within weeks or months of the explosion. 5 things, 5 moments: the weather, the guard, the table, the foot, the phone line. Hitler's revenge was medieval in its brutality. Over 7,000 people were arrested. Nearly 5,000 were executed, including many who had nothing to do with the conspiracy beyond knowing someone who did. The executions were filmed so that Hitler could watch them. Some of the condemned were hanged from meat hooks with piano wire, a method specifically chosen to make death as slow as possible. Stauffenberg's wife, Nina, was arrested. Their 4 children were taken from their home by the Gestapo and put in an orphanage under false names, the specific Nazi policy called Sippenhaft, kin punishment, designed to erase an entire family from history. Nina survived the war. She lived until 2006. She spent the rest of her life fighting to have her husband recognized not as a traitor, which is what the Nazi regime called him, but as what he was. A man who decided that someone had to do something, and that if not him, then who? Claus von Stauffenberg is today considered a national hero in Germany. The street outside the Bendlerblock where he was executed is now named Stauffenbergstrasse. He was 36 years old. History does not turn on grand forces alone. It turns on the weather, on a guard knocking on a door, on a foot nudging a briefcase 2 inches to the left, on one man with 3 fingers and 1 eye deciding that if not him, then nobody. If you made it this far, you already know why this story matters. Subscribe to Fading Chronicles for true stories told completely, from the very beginning to the very end.